This is a pretty impactful ruling we wanted to cover and to actually give people some more insight, as there's a number of cases coming down the pipeline now, specifically about social media, about digital rights and democracy, something I really welcome. This in particular, let's put this up there on the screen, was a ruling that came across the wire on Friday, where the Supreme Court laid out a new test for determining when actions taken by government employees on social media, such as posting messages, deleting comments, or blocking users, constitutes an official business versus their personal conduct. So what they have decided is that public officials sets the rules on when public officials can block certain social media users. And what they find specifically is that they have to protect freedom of speech, and they specifically also want to retain First Amendment rights for private citizens to be able to engage with their constituents. This particularly came as a result of this case of a Michigan man, his name is Kevin Lindke, after comments that he had posted to a Port Huron City manager's Facebook page, which were deleted, and his access to the page was blocked entirely. He had criticized the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. The person who blocked him said that his account was personal and that COVID was not part of his official's duties. So what they basically ruled, Crystal, and they have come to, is that blocking your own constituents is therefore a violation of your public duties. But there are some narrow rules as to where they are set. And I really welcome some of these changes as to how exactly these people who try and mix their public and private life and their accounts and all of that can actually interact with the rest of us when they are imbued with public responsibilities.
Yeah, so it seems like there's still going to be more suits in this direction and more defining of exactly where the line is, because It is a kind of a tricky question. You know, if you've got an Instagram that's 95% your dog and your kids, and occasionally you post like a government press release, is that public? Is it your private personal? How do you find where the line is? But I think the fundamental insight here is that these platforms are a critical part of the digital town square, if you want to call it, that there are huge First Amendment implications in terms of how people are allowed to conduct themselves on the platform, and that public officials have a responsibility in accordance with the First Amendment to make sure that their own constituents aren't blocked from accessing these official government communications. So I believe the ruling was unanimous. I think it's, important. I wonder, and I genuinely wonder, this is a question mark for me, whether it could have some implications for the debate and discussion that's going on with regard to TikTok, because part of the question there is also a First Amendment question. Some legal analysts saying that depending on how this is described and depending on how the government, if a ban were to go into effect, how that would be effectuated, that it could also come under legal scrutiny because of First Amendment questions. And so to me, it seems significant that the Supreme Court is, directly acknowledging that these are important First Amendment concerns that are being, considered with regards to social media platforms in particular.
Yes. Yeah, like I said, the crux of the matter really comes down to allowing suits to go through whenever constituents specifically are then blocked by their public officials, allowing and setting those rules. What's important also about what you raised, and actually maybe we can cover this later on in the week, is specifically about these First Amendment protections, because what we're really talking about are digital rights, is that our digital extension of our current life in the town square that's all been litigated over the last 200 years and applying it to this. For example, there's actually a very important Supreme Court case that is going before the court today around the Biden administration contacting social media companies and alleging that misinformation, this was around vaccines, that was occurring on the platform. The plaintiffs are bringing a case saying that that was a direct violation of free speech and was specifically meddling in the speech of U.S. citizens by advocating for this, especially when it was an official position of the White House. And we'll remember that infamous Jen Psaki comment that if you're blocked from one place and you should be blocked everywhere. That could then set up the rules for where the government is even allowed to interact with these social media companies. So you put all these kind of things together, what I think is important is that it really just gets to the idea that we do have rights as citizens on these companies, that the companies themselves are now, it's being taken out of their wheelhouse. It never really should have been there in the first place. And it is then entering the public sphere to which we can have a commonly held understanding that is not just up to some idiot in Menlo Park as to what I am allowed to say and not, and especially when we're interacting here. When you think about it too in the COVID context, this is a man who is under a lockdown, who is protesting against his government's handling, specifically local government's handling of the COVID pandemic. Well, he was under a lockdown. So how else was he allowed to make his speech heard? It's not like he couldn't go out into a public without a mask and actually say something. So that's when it becomes really critical for the ability to voice dissent. And that's where I think a lot of this comes down to. I also would be remiss if we didn't mention our own Ryan Grimm. Let's put this up there on the screen. We were all trying to determine whether we're blocked by public officials. We're not actually sure because you never necessarily know who you're blocked by unless you go and look. But Ryan is actually blocked by Congressman Richie Torres. So as he says here, yo, Richie Torres, the Supreme Court says this is unconstitutional. Not quite, although we would definitely support a lawsuit there if it were to go through to try and force Richie Torres to unblock him and then deal with Ryan some critical questions. Anything else you want to say on this?
Yeah, Richie Torres is kind of notorious for blocking anyone who criticizes him, so no surprise. Ryan is not a constituent of Richie Torres. I have no doubt that Richie Torres has plenty of his own constituents blocked, so he may want to look into that before he faces a lawsuit, given this new precedent. I just want to say on a practical note for Twitter users out there, I never block anyone. If someone's annoying me, I just mute them. It's such a much better function.
Thank you.
They don't know they're muted. You know, you don't give them that like ego boost of realizing that they got under your skin enough that you actually blocked them. So I guess we'll have to wait for the Supreme Court hearings on whether muting your constituents is also a violation of the First Amendment.
Yeah, you know, that's a great point. Actually, here, I'm trying to see if I've ever blocked anyone. So according to, I have not blocked anybody, according to my Twitter blocked account. As you said, if I click on muted accounts, there's a hell of a lot of accounts of people who I have muted. Mostly people who are like, please debate me, or somebody who's annoying, but that's it. So I agree with you. Public officials, establish a Crystal and Sagar standard. Just mute them. Then you don't even have to interact with them, and they can waste their life, you know, replying to you and trying to ruin that, you know, trying to poison your headspace, and you won't even know about it. So anyways, there you go.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.